Welcome to Relationship Mastery, a podcast for those who want to learn how to master the art of creating happy, healthy, and loving relationships. Please join me, Adey-Jones, and my co-host, Barry Selby, each Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific for a lively and informative conversation on everything to do with relationships. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again. If you listened last week, we gave a tease for this week. Last week was the legacy of our mothers and what we wanted to continue, the traits we wanted to continue, the gifts that they gave us that we wanted to continue, and those that we wanted to leave behind. But this week, we touched on it last week about attachment styles. And our mothers are usually the primary indicator, the relationship we had with our mother as to how we develop our attachment styles. I just will recap on what I shared last week. And there are fundamentally 4 different attachment styles. There's the secure attachment style that we have. That's about 50% of the population have the secure attachment style. And then the other 3 are, there's the insecure attachment style, and there's the avoidant attachment style, and the disorganized attachment style. And we're going to go into a little deeper on which describe each one a little more clearly here. But just to sort of recap again, the attachment style is usually it can develop later in life by circumstances and everything, but it's usually pretty set in place in the formative years, those few, the first couple, 2 or 3 years that you are, on this planet, and your relationship you had with your mother. So to start off with, I think the secure one is pretty self-explanatory. It's when your mother was around, and you felt you knew that you were beginning to differentiate. You knew that you weren't exactly your mother anymore. There was a separation. She would disappear a bit and come back. You learned to sort of trust that your caregiver was going to be there. If you cried, they came and took care of you. Your needs were met. So that creates that secure attachment style. The insecure attachment style is where you did get some of that loving, but it was intermittent for whatever reason. It wasn't consistent. Your primary caregiver, usually your mother, just wasn't consistent. Sometimes she left you crying or left you in a wet diaper or whatever it was that had you fearful and anxious that she wasn't going to return. So that's that insecure attachment style. And then there's the other attachment style, which is the avoidant attachment style. Is usually when you've suffered some more extreme neglect or abandonment by your parent, and you actually, it's the parent that is supposed to love you causes you the most pain. So there's this thing of you have this fear of attaching to somebody that you love, because in your mind the wiring has already said, people you love hurt you. So what people do is they grow up after enough of that experiences, they close off and they deny themselves a relationship. They become super independent or self-sufficient. They sometimes they can just not have any relationships and quite happily move through life on their own in that super independent way. And then there's the disorganized attachment style, which is one I said I identified with, which is that you desire that attachment, but you fear it, because in your wiring, love means pain. Love means hurt. As I said, it's usually originates from more of a severe childhood abuse, abandonment, abuse, and neglect. Sexual abuse too can contribute to that. It's that sort of ambivalence of wanting it and yearning for it, but at the same time fearing it. That ping-ponging. Often, certainly in my life, and I look in my clients, there's a lot of that. I was with somebody that was safe, but I was bored, and it didn't feel good. So then I went after somebody that was unavailable, and all the passion and excitement was there. And then I got hurt, and then I ran back to safety, and the pendulum just goes back and forth and back and forth, and it can be really exhausting and painful. So, Barry, what's your experience or your take on the attachment styles here?
Well, the thing is, it's interesting. I mean, you covered it beautifully, so I don't want to repeat what you said because you covered it well. But something came up in sharing it and realizing a couple of things. First of all, as said in the last episode, I know I come from a secure background, which, as you said, half the population basically is in a secure position in terms of attachment style. But I realize there's a common thread between the insecure and the anxious. Well, there's more than one, but one common thread I'm aware of between anxious and um, avoidant is a lack of trust. Because what we're talking about in a lot of cases for the avoidant attachment style, they don't trust that love is safe, mostly. There's an underlying sense of the threat that comes from it, and pain that comes from it. So they'll avoid it as much as possible because they want to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
So they tend to not have trust for love. The anxious attachment style is more on the sense that they can't trust that love will stay or be reliable. So both of them have issues with trust. Just so when people say they got trust issues, it might be one of those things going on underneath it as well, just to give some people something to think about. The other part is that, and I want to make this very clear.
Barry, before you
Always,
move on, I just really want just to pause for a second because I think what you said is so important. I just don't want
sure,
people to miss it because it really is. No, it really is. It's absolutely, and it's so clear. It's like both people do suffer from. One of them is so afraid or not trusting love that they hole up, whereas the other person is so not trusting that love is going to stay there that they cling on. But the
do
same
it. Yeah,
thing is there, the fear
yeah,
fear that love is not going to last or it's not going to hurt them. Like I said, the insecure attachment is like, I can't let you out of my sight in case you disappear and you never come back again. Whereas the
right.
avoidant is like, get out of my sight because I'm afraid of attaching to you and then getting hurt by you. So I
Yeah,
think it's a great thing you pointed out. So sorry to interrupt, but it really
no,
landed, and I want people to really hear that it's the
thank
same
you.
issue underneath it.
Well, thank you for bringing me back to that point because that is key. And another thing I'll add to that piece, which I said last episode, was how the way I use an imaginary analogy for this is that basically the person who's avoidant has a very small cup, like thimble-sized cup that you can fill up with love, and then you're done because it's too much. There's not safe enough to expect more than that, which is the way the avoidant style is. Whereas the one who's more insecure has a cup that has a hole in it, so it's never enough. So they're always attached, clinging, needing. So what you said is so true. I mean, I like playing with analogies. Is why I come up with like cups and other ideas and stuff. But the other piece I want to say to underscore this and to make sure people know this, it sounds dramatic and it is. There's definitely extremes to this spectrum of attachment styles. But the good news is that every single position on that scale can be changed, meaning that if you are someone who's been dealing with the fact you've been avoidant, you can work with that. And again, as we said last week, get support, get help, maybe do some therapy to get back to a place where you can become secure. If you're someone who's anxious, the same thing's true. That maybe you feel like there's no way out, but the truth is there is an opportunity to change that wiring inside, so you can be a secure attachment style. And the good news is when you're secure, it's easy to navigate the whole process to a degree. There's other stuff too, but that simple analogy, recognizing that spectrum we're talking about here is malleable, that you can shift, is
Yeah,
key.
you can definitely shift, but I think there's also some things that are really important to see about yourself and traits that can happen. Like with the avoidant, for example, the avoidant can be hypercritical of their partner to help them avoid them.
Yes.
That's attack. They can see, instead of seeing all the wonderful things in their partner, they see all the faults in them, and it's not
Yes.
because they're just a horrible negative person. It's because when they can keep reminding themselves of, oh, this is wrong with the other person, this is wrong with them, this is wrong with them, they're not the ideal mate. They keep a safe distance from them. So
Mhm.
understanding that alone, that it's not about the other person's deficits or not being right for you. It's actually your defense mechanism coming up, creating this distance by being critical of them. I mean, that's
Yeah.
vital to see. And the same thing with the the anxious attachment style,
Mhm.
that your neediness to keep depending on the other person to fill that, which I call a bottomless pit, which can never be filled just by an outside in,
Exactly.
but to
Yes.
putting all the emphasis on, you need to do this for me to feel loved about myself, that trait can destroy a relationship too. So just as much as the hypercritical, you're not right for me, therefore I can pull away from you, and the other one going, you're not right for me because you don't fill me up enough. The message is the same. It's putting distance between you, and it's creating a dynamic in the relationship that is, unless you are ready to look at your part of it and not just keep blaming the other person, then there's
Yeah.
room for growth. Because yeah, it's yeah, I can see you're jumping at the bit here. Harry. Jump in.
Well, first of all, say if you've been listening to any of our episodes, I suspect you're looking for something more anyway. So what we're saying here, again, it's all possible to transform what you're saying. So what you're saying is so true that we have the opportunity here. And yeah, I mean, I use a cup with a hole in it. You do a bottomless pit. Yours is more dramatic, but same impact. It is that sense of never getting enough. And the thing that I love about this conversation is that we're talking about a structure of attachment styles, yet the way it impacts us has such a wide array of feelings that we go through. And I want to repeat what you said, or underscore something you said, and say another way too. With the avoidant one, where basically you're looking for faults, it's because if you're in this place, you are feeling that you cannot accept too much. So you've got to make things wrong to basically decrease the volume of love you're feeling, so you don't get overwhelmed by it,
Yeah,
which keeps you
exactly.
in a good place. But the anxious one, I've also think there's another part of that anxious style is that sometimes people are so anxious to be loved that they'll put up with so much crap
Mm-hmm.
just to get an ounce of love so they can feel like they're getting something they want. And that's the thing about anxious attachment styles. I suspect, no, I know that some people who are in abusive relationships stay there because they have an anxious attachment style.
Oh, without a doubt, absolutely.
Yeah, it
They
wasn't a one. That's true. Yeah,
if they feel that they would die without this other person, that they've
yeah,
attached so deeply psychologically that yeah, it's death to detach from something
right.
when you have that much of a dependency, and you put your life on this person. So yeah, it does feel like death to walk away. And going
Yeah,
back to the avoidant as well, it is that sort of that space to breathe. Often as an avoid, I can see I'm grey here. I can talk about both. I can identify with the
indeed.
anxious and the avoidant. That's why I have the disorganized. But when I am feeling like overwhelmed, or somebody's coming too close to me, or smothering me, or too much, I run totally. I'm just like I create distance. I have got to have distance. Cannot feel overwhelmed and consumed by another person. But at the same time, I can attach to the point, as you mentioned, I have been in emotionally abusive relationships in the past, because when I attach, even though it looks like I'm super independent, I am attached, very
Yeah,
attached. And for me to unattach is challenging. It really is. It's difficult, and people might look at me and think, "Well, you're so independent. You have this other sort of such a big life," but it's there. It's still there. It still plays out, and that's what
right.
creates that sort of that creating this, not just for the person that suffers from this disorganized attachment, but from the person that's with you. They're like, well, who are you? One minute you want me, the next minute you don't, and it's a very, very, but it can be healed. And like I said, I can identify with it because I have the awareness and I have the ability to look at it and go, oh, and I've done so much work on myself that I can actually say, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, which is fabulous. So when I find myself being critical, instead of saying, well, it's something wrong with the other person, I immediately think, oh, you just need a bit of space, Del. That's all you're looking for is a bit of space. So
Yeah.
I can communicate that instead of making the other person wrong.
So speaking to the secure side for a moment, because that's where I tend to reside in my own upbringing and the way I live life. The things for the people listening to discover here on the secure side of things is basically is where these variances aren't so impactful for you. Meaning that if you're in a relationship with somebody, there's an amount, and again, we're talking about one facet of relationships, not all facets. So some things we're talking about here may be impacted completely by something else entirely. But in this context, in secure attachment style relationships, the partners in that relationship, if they're both secure, have a sense of ease with each other, not perfection, but where they're not like checking in all the time when they make sure they're okay. Because the anxious attachment style is going to say checking in, like, "Are you okay? Are you still with me?" Like that sort of pulse checking thing, which is kind of very overwhelming sometimes. And on the other hand, you can be with somebody and they're not going to be trying to force themselves away from you all the time. So basically, secure is kind of in between that. The
Mm-hmm.
secure attachment style is where you have I must say balance is the word I'm using, but it's more than that. It's a sense of just having a dancing relationship that tends to work. And with generally with secure attachment styles, you can take time apart with understanding, not disappearing, but just simply saying, I'm going to go do the project for a week or whatever it is, and the other person is usually fine with it. And there are also times when they can be totally enmeshed with each other, and it's totally fine as well. And there's a freedom in a secure attachment style relationship that isn't as easy to get when it's on the other end of the two extremes. And that's the thing, as we said a couple of times already, your attachment style can be transformed, can be healed if you feel yourself needing to do the work. But the ultimate key is that when your relationship, your centeredness with your partner is not impacted by what they do or don't do as much. That's the biggest lesson, I guess, of the whole thing, because we are tend to be wired for this, and again, and other patterns too. We talked about earlier in our series about codependency and other things too, is how we tend to be at the mercy of how the relationship's functioning versus self-governed. And so you were saying about when you get a chance to check in and go, oh yeah, I need more space. That self-will, that self-awareness, that self-reflection. I mean, it's true for all relationship growth to have that understanding, but in secure attachment style, it tends to be easy to get to than
Mm.
somebody's on one of the extremes. So what we're speaking to here is something that's very foundational.
Yeah, no, it's exactly what you're saying is like it is, and the word balance does come to me too. It is a balance. It's being or self-aware for a fact, as I said, to not sort of keep projecting stuff onto your partner and to justify your feelings, like I'm doing this or feeling this way because of them. It's like, no, I feel this way because I didn't get enough love and secure attachment as a child, or I was abandoned and I had to take care of myself, and that's my comfort zone. But just knowing that about yourself and how you show up in the relationship. But going back to how, like you said, obviously, I mean, if you can have the secure attachment style and you're born with it, fabulous, because you're so secure, you actually make a good, you can be good in a relationship with either an avoidant or an insecure attachment style because you're so steady that their triggers are not being they're not so triggered. What happens where the triggers go flying is when you've got an avoidant and you've got an insecure attachment style. So what's happening is the insecure one is violating every boundary to get their need met. They're not respecting the space that the avoidant needs, and they're clinging and coming towards them, and that can be really scary for an avoidant, and they can become even more entrenched in their pushing back, like leave me alone, it's too much. And so that dance starts happening there where it's so painful, especially for
Mhm.
the insecure attachment style, because they're never going to get their needs met if they keep forcing themselves on somebody that has the avoidance style. But again, with an
Side,
pardon?
saying on the other side, the same thing applies.
No, exactly. The avoidant is not getting the space they want. So
Right,
often that relationship, unless you are aware, both of you in that relationship are aware of your styles and can accommodate each other. And as I said earlier, do not take it personally. If the avoidant says, "I need space," it's a little too much for me right now, that the insecure person or with insecure attachment style can self comfort, can know that what they're seeking from the other person is actually what they're looking for within them, and it's available within them, and
right.
to actually take care and to fill that cup up yourself, or that bottomless pit, or put a plug in the bottomless pit, which is self-love, which is an episode that's coming up soon. But that self-love, fill yourself up with that self-love. And again, as I said, that's the insecure attachment style. It's your job to fill yourself up. It's lovely to have connection with each other. Absolutely. I'm not saying be so self-sufficient that you become like the avoidant, but
Right.
don't keep looking to your partner to fill you up, fill yourself up. And the same with the avoidant. Know your triggers, know who you are, be brave, step outside, come towards somebody else. You can say, hey, don't come any further. I think they're afraid of, or we, because I totally identify with the avoidant at times, we're afraid of boundaries being violated. We're afraid that if we come out of our, behind the wall that we've set up, like do not penetrate this wall, if we come out, that people will violate our boundaries. And to just know that no, you're an adult now. Maybe things happened as a child. Maybe people did not respect your boundaries or violate you. But as an adult, you can come out, you have a voice, and you can just say, hey, this is enough for me. This is too much. Uh, back off a little bit. So with 100%, there's room for growth on both sides. But as I said, before just blaming the other person, you've got to look at your own style. You've got to look at it, what it is. Are you showing up secure? Or are you showing up with this sort of insecure or this avoidant? And self-awareness is the best. And also know that some people are not prepared to do the work. And if you are somebody that wants an intimate, loving relationship, and you're with an avoidant who is not prepared to do the work whatsoever, you will be
Right.
frustrated for the rest of your life. So maybe that's not the person for you. Maybe you need to leave that relationship and find somebody that's more suitable for you.
Absolutely. About one thing I want to underscore that add to the conversation, because the thing is, again, being in a secure style, I've had experiences in relationship where I've been both with avoidant and anxious, and it wasn't fun. You say, I mean, like saying it's okay for me to be, if I'm secure with it one, I can be okay with either one. Yes, and there's times I remember vividly being in a relationship where I was told that I was coming on too strong
Mm-hmm.
because her attachment style was obviously avoidant,
Yeah,
and it wasn't at the time. I took it personally, big time.
yeah.
But I started, I was holding myself back because of her. It's like, no, that was actually her
Mm-hmm.
avoidance style coming up. And the thing is, and she wouldn't. Of course, this is before I even understood this stuff, so I didn't know what to do with it. So
Mm-hmm.
that one on the other side of the coin, I also had a relationship with someone who was very anxious, and it was smothering, and I couldn't stay with it ultimately because of my own self preservation.
Mm-hmm.
I needed space. Just to say that, in a sense, there's an if you imagine again a spectrum where you've got anxious on one side and avoidant on the other side and secure in the middle, it's not clear boundaries in between them, meaning that there's an edge to the secure that moves into avoidant, there's an edge to secure that moves into anxious as well. So we are, and I know for myself, I've been at both ends of the secure spectrum, meaning that I've leaned into both avoidant and anxious as well. So these are not three distinct arenas necessarily. Yes, there are certain archetypes and clear understandings of each one, but I recognize that we all carry an array we move around in between, depending on who we are in relationship with. You
100.
know,
That's such an important thing. And it is. Whoever you're with can trigger a certain response. For me, if I'm with an avoidant, which is my favorite place to be, because because there's space. But when I'm with an avoidant, I can come towards them more. But if I'm with somebody that's an insecure attachment style, I'm just like holed up in my castle. It's like,
right?
because I'm so afraid of being not afraid, it's not the right word. It's just uncomfortable with
Yeah.
with clinginess or over dependence. It's not my comfort zone. But with
Mhm.
somebody that's avoidant too, it's like, yeah, I know this space. Yeah, I get this. So I can come out and play a bit more if I'm with an avoidant. But it is fun. I'm sorry, we're using these words and everything, but when you can hold it all lightly and you can laugh at yourself and you can step back and you can see the 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 dances we do with each other, the innocent dances. We haven't a clue what we're doing when we're doing them, but when we can step back enough and go, oh my God, I see the push pull. I see what I
Yeah,
was doing there. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, it's a beautiful thing. It really is. It's beautiful when we get to see ourselves and we're less entrenched in the behavior. We have that distance and that insight to just look at it and go, oh gosh,
Oh,
here we go again. I know this dance. I've
Well,
done it before.
the thing, and to underscore the point of the lightness, because we covered some deep topics over our podcast so far in the last dozen 2 dozen episodes. But the thing is that there's so much that we can talk about here, and we have talked about. There's more to talk about. I mean, with attachment styles, and love languages, and your NLP styles and everything else. There's so much you can actually interpret and paralyze yourself with analysis. Analysis by paralysis. Is the thing is that what we're talking about here is that these are things to be aware of. These are different parts of your personality. Maybe you didn't notice before. Now you are noticing it for the first time. As you said earlier, which I absolutely underscore, awareness is key. So if you're becoming aware by what we're sharing here, that this is something you didn't know before, and you go, "Oh my God, I have this attribute," for want of a better word. Know that it's something. One is adjustable, as you mentioned. Two, it's not a death sentence. But three, it's something you can learn to play with and to grow beyond. And so all these things we're talking about are additive to your life and give you a better skill at being a partner in relationships. So just make sure what we're teaching you here is not to make yourself wrong or bad or somehow you've self-flagellating yourself because of what we said. No. What we're talking about here in all our talks are ideas to look at yourself and your relationships to find ways to become a better partner for yourself and a better partner for your future partner if you're not in a relationship right now.
Yeah,
So know that what we're doing is adding to your life.
I think that's pretty clear. But
Yeah.
anyway, but no, and you said something, and as you said the word, it's not a death sentence. What came popped in my head is, it is absolutely the key out of a jail. It's
Ooh,
freedom.
yes.
It really is freedom. So anything we mention here, whether we're talking inner child, we're talking about, legacies of the father wound or the mother wound, all of this stuff is it's just as we said, it's freedom. It's like you go, oh, that didn't occur to me before. God, that because we all have blind spots. We have
Yes.
massive blind spots. And as I said, my probably one of the biggest insights I had was when I realized that I was critical of my partner to create space. That was, I mean, not only did it make my life easier, but my God, did it make my partner's life easier because I stopped being so critical. I mean, that's massive. That is massive. And yeah, it's all of this is good. All of it is just helping to have a more conscious and aware relationship and less sort of that murkiness and that sort of cloudiness of what the hell's going on. I don't know why I behave this way. But when we
Right.
understand why and again, it's not set in stone. This isn't who we are as people. We're made of infinite potential. We can change on a dime. We can have an insight and see something differently, and we can change like that. It's incredible how that can happen. Some not always overnight. Sometimes it does take months or years, but when we have those light bulb moments of seeing with clarity, and it can change the dynamics that we find ourselves in our relationships, it's so worth it. It's just incredible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So keep listening to our podcast. We give you good stuff.
So yeah, so come on, let's just a little bit more here. We got another minute or so just to wrap it up. What's your final words, Barry?
Well, as I did joke because you underscored it about the fact that it's not fatal, and it is a freedom from jail idea, which is a great idea to put it in. Relationships for me, and this is an overarching thing, are an incredible. I was going to say laboratory, but it's too scientific. But an incredible place to grow and learn about who we are.
Mm.
So, and I've talked about this in my work a lot too. Being single is a great place to do the work as well, because when you're single, you can look back at your past history and navigate life from a much more whole-centered place. And attachment styles, as we talked about, there is a spectrum, there's an array, there's ways of being, and you may have discovered that you have been in all three locations or even four locations in your life. The key, though, is understanding if you're noticing it isn't working the way you want to, what is the one you're most connected to, which is the one that resonates most for you. And if it's one of the ones that are more on the outskirts, the border, so to speak, whether it's the anxious or avoidant, notice that's what's been happening. But the key thing is it doesn't have to keep happening.
Mm.
You can make a change, you get some help, transform your life, and have a relationship that doesn't copy what you did before.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it's also just to sort of say, we don't want to look back and go, oh my God, I left that relationship because I thought there was something wrong with them. And not to say
Mm,
there's something wrong with us, but I think when we do our work, when we do understand ourselves, we're less likely to leave something blaming the other person. We leave from
yeah,
a very empowered place of, this is just not a match anymore. But you have the information, you are that self awareness, that clarity. You can leave with love. You can leave but that leaving with that finger pointing of there's something wrong with you, and you weren't enough, and you didn't do this for me, and you didn't that. If we can just walk away with like, you were a beautiful human being, and we shared so incredible time together, but it's time to leave now. So,
hmm,
or on the flip side of that is, now I understand myself so better. This relationship is working. This is amazing. I don't need to leave it. So
there you go.
both ways.
Perfect.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank
So,
you, everybody. Another great show, great chat, Barry.
yes, indeed. And next week be another episode with something different. So, and again, recap: if you haven't watched our previous episodes, please do. We're on this is episode 33. The content we share is for you to have a more improved relationship with yourself and a more improved relationship with anybody else. So take that message to heart. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you're subscribing. And if you haven't, leave a comment with us. Let us know what you think of our episodes, what you think of our thoughts. And if you have ideas or questions we can answer for you, let us know.
Beautiful. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye, Barry.
Take care. Bye, Del.
Bye-bye.
We trust you enjoyed this episode and invite you to share this with your friends and loved ones. In fact, please subscribe to our Relationship Mastery podcast. That way you'll get each new episode fresh and shiny as soon as it is released. We'd love to hear from you as well. So go ahead and enter your questions and comments at relationshipmastery.show. Take good care. We will connect with you in our next episode of Relationship Mastery.